If it goes more to the left, like to get a call.
I thought they spent it on Rhode Island side.
They should honestly actually switch over a little bit more to the right. But
And the blue fences.
got it. Yep. Okay. Yeah. I mean, this is fine.
After time.
Yep.
Hello, everyone. We don't have microphones, so I'm going to try to project, and I hope that everybody can hear. And my apologies. I swear, next time we do a forum, we will have mics. But good evening. I'm Elizabeth McNamara, the editor of East Greenwich News. Thank you all for being here. And I am here with Deborah Goddard, who is the Secretary of Housing for the state of Rhode Island. She was appointed last December, and she has more than 40 years of experience in this field. So we are so grateful to have you here today. She was at the East Greenwich Affordable Housing Commission, invited her sometime this summer, and she made the mistake of saying she would go anywhere to talk to anyone, and I'm like, oh, okay. So she was gracious enough to say yes tonight, and so welcome, Deborah. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I do. I think I'm either, you can consider me a pest or an advocate, but I will speak anywhere to anyone about the need for housing and what we're doing in Rhode Island. Signal me if you can't hear me. So let's dig into it. We know we need housing in Rhode Island. Like most of our country, we're facing huge increases over time in rent and housing costs. So how did we get here? Not difficult to figure it out. Since February of 2020, the cost of construction materials have gone up 40%. 2012 to 2022, over 10 years, land values went up 81%. So as I say, economics 101. Home prices increased 65%, rents increased 60%, and wages increased 29%. We can all do the math and know we're in trouble. Key consideration, over the past decade, Rhode Island's rate of permitting has ranked last in the nation. And then all recent polls show that 79% of residents agree that Rhode Island needs more housing. Where to put that housing? People start getting a little more cautious. Yes, the state needs more housing. Yeah, our region needs more housing. My neighborhood doesn't need more housing. And we continue to face that fight across the state, not unusual to Rhode Island. So go back to this, what's standing in the way? We don't allow the homes to be built that we need. I hear over and over again, they only build luxury housing. They only build large lot housing. It's largely different because that's what they can do by right. And builders are going to take the route of least resistance. Local zoning ordinance require hefty reviews, larger minimum lot sizes. 87% of Rhode Island is zoned for single family by right, meaning building permit, application go. 20% is zoned for two families by right. In most communities, you could not build your town center anymore because the zoning that was in place when we built our compact town centers is no longer existent. In East Greenwich, only 2% of your land is zoned for multifamily units. 97% single family by right. This is a major obstacle here and across the state, across much of New England, not unique to Rhode Island. So what are we doing? We've created a statewide housing plan. It's the first housing plan in almost 20 years for the state of Rhode Island. The last one was 2006. We have measurable goals for this. We have goals for every community. We have set aside, we have goals for affordable rental, goals for permanent supportive housing, goals for accessory dwelling units. Here we have large headline, 15,000 new homes permitted by the end of 2030. 5-year goal starting in January. 1,000 low-cost homeownership units, figure that's at about a $400,000 entry price. Triple the ADUs that have been permitted, accessory dwelling units. Increase middle market units by 50%. When we say middle market, we're not really referring to income, we're referring to the type of housing. Cottages, townhomes, garden units. Well, this is outdated. It's permitted 2250 affordable rental, and we can't forget to preserve. If we don't preserve the affordable stock we have, as we take one step forward, we're gonna take one step back.
Could you explain what that means?
Yes, so housing that is currently built, that was built over the past 30 years or so, maybe with HUD funding, local funding, that had affordability requirements, and they're lapsing. They're able to go market.
Is it typically like a 30-year deed restriction?
Yes,
So-
generally it's been 30 years, which 30 years ago people thought that was forever, and that we'd solve the problem. It also can be that the housing is in need of a lot of physical repair, and we're gonna lose it for that reason as well. I tend to go quickly, please feel free to tell me that.
I have a question. The 375 supportive, permanent supportive housing units, does that have anything, any supportive housing for individuals with disabilities?
So the question is, what about the 375 units of permanent supportive housing, would that provide housing for persons with disabilities? It's across the spectrum, yes.
Okay. But in the sense that like supports would be built into the unit?
When we say supportive housing, yes, it would have to be probably a partnering of a developer and a service provider, whatever the services were for the population that was gonna be served.
Okay.
Yep. How are we doing this? Well, we'll get back to this, we've set municipal goals for every community. We want to address zoning and regulatory barriers. Some of the regulatory barriers are at the state level, not just the local level. We're looking at that across the board. Make strategic investments, we'll get to this. The state passed overwhelmingly a bond bill, and we've now just put out some of that money, we'll speak to that. Build and sustain key partnerships, that's whether you're a municipality, whether you're a service provider, whether you're LISC, philanthropy, we need partnerships to do any of this. And support home ownership and housing stability. So let me speak to this a little bit. As I said, we set production goals for every community. This is actually, I have to say, I inherited a lot of this work. A lot of this work was done before I got here. The team met with every community as we were creating these goals. There was a lot of public outreach. And once we had put goals in place, we offered the opportunity for every community to meet with us, to go over their particular goals. And then in public comment, we got some comments about how we set those goals and made some changes in response to those comments.
I got questions on goals. Is it easier for you to go through the presentation, ask the questions later, or ask them as they go along?
Why don't we, thank you. Why don't we finish?
Yes.
And then, in case I answer you.
Okay.
So, we set 3 different levels of growth for communities. We looked at what communities were job rich, what communities were well served by public transit, and those that perhaps weren't served by either and weren't job rich. So we have continued growth. This is the East Greenwich category. There's limited job and transit access. You're expected to permit 0.4% of your existing housing stock on average for each of the next 5 years. Let's put that, be clear, 0.4, not even 1% increase. Your current housing stock, 500, well, you can read it yourself. Your production goal is 111 units for over 5 years. Your 5-year affordable housing goal is 17. I really think that's probably quite achievable. But moving beyond the continued growth, then we had our job rich, expected to permit 0.6%, and then our strategic growth, 0.8%. So I really think genuinely these are fairly modest goals across the state, but they will.
What would a job rich community be and strategic growth? Just give us a picture.
Okay,
Is
I'm
Providence
gonna,
a job rich?
huh?
Is Providence? a
Providence is job rich, yes, I forget the data point they use, but it's a percent of job availability as compared to the state.
Strategic growth? What community would be that? Sorry.
Probably Providence, Pawtucket, I'm not sure where Cranston comes in, there's a list, it's on our website, the whole piece is on our website. So you can get all of that. Yeah. I wanna talk too about what is affordable housing, and I'll have some materials to leave with you folks. So a lot of people cringe when we say affordable housing. I try now just to say housing that is affordable to folks across the income spectrum. Generally, that means you don't spend more than 30% of your income on your rent or your home costs. And people are getting squeezed across that spectrum. Our plan and our goal is to build housing for the very low income that have fixed wages up through executive. We need it across the whole spectrum in our state. We need to be able to retain and recruit people across that income spectrum and across the age spectrum too, to keep vitality and keep our economy growing. So do this, I think a lot of people can see the strain right here. The average rent for a 2-bedroom, $2,300 plus a month. You'd have to earn $92,000 plus to afford this apartment. If you think of particularly young people entering the market, that's just not attainable. And I don't think any of us think of $92,000 when we think affordable or them or low income. So again, that's why I try and stay away from those terms. And we try and put careers and jobs and real numbers to these terms and get away from affordable, very low, workforce. In fact, I won't use the phrase workforce because someone working as a clerk at the supermarket at minimum wage is workforce. And we implicitly demean them when we say, oh, there's this housing and then there's workforce housing. Workforce spans the whole income spectrum. Sometimes I can go down a dark hole on this. I will pull back up. Again, average single family home, $475,000 price tag. You would need to earn over $158,000 to buy that. These numbers, I think, really bring home the challenge we have and the breadth of the housing crisis and urgency that we feel. And again, not just Rhode Island, but Rhode Island feels it particularly so because of its failure to build in prior years. I will say that we've had a big uptick in 23 and 24. We're in the right trajectory. We have to keep it going. And this fun fact, Rhode Island, Housing Works Rhode Island just came out with their fact book. So folks often are concerned that new housing will impact, and particularly multifamily housing, will impact their school costs, their town costs. The fact of the matter is that multifamily housing is actually more cost effective on a per acre basis than your single family. And you can think about it. Think about that 3,000 or 6,000 or 12,000 square foot house on one lot. Maybe that lot carries 6 2,000 square feet homes. And this is the math that works out. We are actually finishing up in the first quarter next year another study on the net impact on municipal costs of net new housing. There have been studies in the past, all of them deflate the notion that net new housing costs, has negative cost impacts, but we're updating that study. We should have it out, as I said, in the first quarter of next calendar year. What are we doing about it? As I said, you all voted a bond bill worth $120 million. We started rolling it out this week. We're putting money into infrastructure. We heard over and over again from communities that water, sewer, septic, roads and sidewalks, huge obstacles. The bond legislation put $4 million towards it. We doubled it, still not enough, but we did double because we heard back from communities when we went over our goals that this was a real issue. There was $1 million for technical assistance, where again, we're putting that towards architectural and engineering for infrastructure available to communities. Those RFPs are available now on our website. Statewide home repair program, $6 million. Providence Revolving Loan Fund, which is a statewide organization, will manage that statewide. We hear over and over again, a lot of elderly homeowners need adaptive reuse or help with their home. This repair program will guide a homeowner to the right contractor, help them work out the cost and the specs. You know, it can be a very scary process, and it can be a process open to a lot of misuse too, in terms of rehab of your own home. We also know by research that homeowner repair programs are the most prolific way to keep lower income homeowners in their homes. Okay, that's not moving.
Are those home repair programs, are they grants or loans?
They are grants with a condition of, if you do multifamily, who you're renting to for a period of time. No, but that's okay. I'm almost done, actually. More from the program. We have we're gonna do a set-aside preservation program. Again, we can't go 2 steps backwards if we're trying to go 4 steps forward. What else might matter? We will have 20 million for home ownership, entry level. We're trying to hit that, as I said, that price point of 400,000. It's gonna take a lot, perhaps using some factory built housing, but we're gonna get there. And there will be an acquisition fund for nonprofits. We have put the RFP, Peter, is that out yet? Is out. It's almost a challenge grant. We're asking an entity or entities to come in. The bond bill had 5 million, that won't go far in trying to acquire property. So we're asking, we want to seed a revolving loan fund. And we're asking an entity or entities come in that can match our 5 million, at least 1-for-1, to create at least a $10 million loan fund for nonprofits who would have a line of credit to help them compete in the market. See something, they don't have to come back to us for a vote or whatever. They've got a line of credit, they can go make the down payment, the deposit, whatever, and pay us back, pay the revolving loan fund back at closing. So I know I covered a lot, and I am really here to let you know what we're doing, but also to hear from you. I'm gonna leave here with a few things. As I said, Housing Works Rhode Island publishes what's called the fact book. You can go on their website and see the whole thing, but this is the excerpt of the information that they have on East Greenwich. Similarly, this is their overall on Rhode Island. We have one here, we've put together housing myths versus facts. That will be available for you. Again, going over some of what I went over. What is affordable? Who does it serve? And what's our terminology mean? And then a recap of our Housing 2030 plan, which, as I said, is on our website, and on the back has the municipal goals for every community. So with that, I will turn it over to you.
I guess I'll just start with, go ahead. Stand up and speak as loudly as you can, if you don't mind.
Thanks so much for coming. Certainly helps to kind of lay things out. My question is, the money for nonprofits, is that only for acquisition of land, or does it mean that they could perhaps buy properties that are you know, no longer in
Right.
use, but rehab them to become apartments or condos or whatever.
It really is meant for land. There is another, part of the bond bill, which is acquisition and adaptive reuse, so you could go in and get a school or a mall or anything, a historic building, a mill, and convert that into housing as well.
And how much is available for that?
10 million. By the way, this is Peter Asen, our Director of Production and Preservation, and I'm not gonna let your hometown guy hide back there. James Comer from Yorktown, who's Deputy Director of Rhode Island Housing, our partner in all of this.
Okay.
Okay, so I got a few questions, and I know some of the data went up there. And first of all, and foremost, thank you for coming out, sincerely, I appreciate it. So it's a little bit more on.
Can you guys hear, I'm wondering if you guys would, if you would mind just standing here maybe and projecting?
I'll repeat the
Can you
question.
go-
Okay, she'll repeat the question. Sorry.
Thank you.
So do them one at a time.
Yes, fair enough. I guess all my questions are East Greenwich centric, okay? A lot of the data, a lot of the numbers you provided was state centric, okay? So everything that I'm asking is East Greenwich centric, okay?
Everything is East Greenwich centric and compared to a lot of the statewide data I put up
Okay.
there.
So like we all say, all politics is local.
Mhm.
So that's why these questions are here. So I guess I have 8 questions, believe it or not. So I did give it some thought, yeah, and it's probably buried all in that data, which is great. That's okay. And it's not to stump you. That's not the objective. Okay, so I guess what I'm trying to understand is a few things, and I'll speak in generalities and go see if I cover most of the questions. I've heard and seen in writing that East Greenwich had a quota to meet. And then I heard we met our quota. And then I heard, oh, we didn't, we have to go revisit our quota, okay? So if you could spend a little bit of time if it's possible, and then also supplement on where I go for the information. But I'd like to understand who set that quota, okay? Is East Greenwich, has it met that quota, already or not? Okay, and along those lines, how was that quota determined? Who determined that quota? And were the elected officials, et cetera?
Is that all 8 questions right there?
No, this is the nuances of them, okay, because you can speak in a general, you don't have to say each one exactly. So where are we at with those quotas? Because if they're changing, and if we haven't met our quota, I'd like to balance your response with one other thing. There was some other benefit that was associated with this that we had heard, okay? Which was, oh, we're gonna get some bond money, okay, or get some money, that, federal funding was what was used, that I had heard. That we
Get the
get
what?
Federal funding that would offset affordable housing. So, what is it that we got out of the deal? And such?
Before you start, I wanna say.
Do I repeat
this-
the question?
Yes, a lot of questions around, as some of you from East Greenwich may know, each city and town in the state of Rhode Island is supposed to reach 10% of their housing stock as deemed affordable. And we have been making our way there.
And-
And a few months ago,
Excuse me, and that's established by state law.
and that was established by state law in the 90s, I believe,
Yes.
a while ago. We have been making, the idea behind that is that if you could reach 10%, then maybe if someone some developer came in with a development that you didn't love, tell me if I'm speaking wrong.
Okay, so let me reverse this a
Okay.
little bit. This is about the back and forth and whether you've met your quota, not met your quota, where the quota came from. So in this low mod law, 10%, if you hadn't met the 10%, and someone wanted to build something, they could go through what's called your comprehensive permit, a more of a streamlined, avenue where the town has less ability to oppose for other than a set of reasons that really relate to, objective criteria around traffic or environment but not, basically no.
Okay, so in translation, what you're saying is, state could build something, we could potentially just say no if we were already at 10%.
So
we're not
if
at
you were already,
10%.
if you got to your 10%, I mean, anyone can challenge a decision,
Okay,
but you did not have the option, you did not have to allow them to go through this comp permit where it was a more defined set of reasons, harder, easier for the developer to get approval. This wasn't the state going for the permit, it's a private developer, for-profit or nonprofit.
okay.
So you're making progress.
We're making progress, and we, the calculations were, the biggest difference was this past year, they allowed some section.
So they
8.
changed the law a year ago to say you can now count, mobile home parks and what's called rental vouchers. Tenants go wherever they want with their rental assistance.
Section 8 vouchers.
Yeah, and so that changed the count.
That changed the count, but unfortunately, there was a miscalculation, and with that, because we were already counting some of those Section 8 vouchers as part of people who live, let's say, in certain of our East Greenwich Housing Authority.
Those aren't
units.
vouchers, that's the difference.
Well, there's some people who live with vouchers in some of the East Greenwich Housing Authority.
Well, they're generally,
Because they have tax, the East Greenwich Housing Authority has tax credit properties. That's
Tax
right.
credit
Okay,
properties.
okay.
So,
well, tax
so what
credit
happened
properties
was, we
count.
ended up double counting some of those. So East Greenwich News, I just pulled up a story, East Greenwich to reach 10% affordable housing goal this year, this was in May. Elizabeth McNamara wrote that. And then, we had to write another story about a month later saying, actually, no, we aren't gonna get that close. And even that, it's not a fixed number. This keeps changing. If you build 100 new residences and 10 or 20% of those are affordable, you're still building another 80. So this thing is a bit of a dance.
More significantly, if you build 100 with no affordable, you've now fallen behind, because your 10% is
Right.
of a larger denominator.
So, thank you for explaining that. And so I guess, in general, when we say we're not exactly there, whatever, is there a place where we can go to and show where each community in the state of Rhode Island is at in meeting their goals compared to East Greenwich?
Yes, you can go to the Rhode Island Housing website, and it has a list of all the communities and where they are on their 10% goal. Now, though, to be clear, the goals I mentioned here are not the Low Mod Act. These are production goals towards getting to our 15,000 new permitted units in the state.
But again, my focus is on East Greenwich.
And believe it or not, East Greenwich is closer to that goal than a lot of communities, from what I understand.
Right. So, having said that, when you look at this affordable housing gets placed and put in, is there funding, is there something, I understand the law was passed in the 90s through your explanation. Is there funding that comes along with that to the city? Because as we grow, we've grown some big units recently in East Greenwich, et cetera, which I think, and you can correct me, because if my beliefs are wrong, I do want to be corrected with it. But as these things grow, it's an impact to schools, teachers, policemen, firemen, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So with this, we want to build it, we've got to build it. Where's the money coming? Was there federal money that was coming to the city to offset the building that just took place, et cetera?
Okay, so was there federal funding coming with the housing that's being
Right.
built? Because the assumption being, which I've spoken to, is that it's got a net negative fiscal impact to the communities in which it's being sited. There was never federal funding coming to a community. And in fact, the studies done to date show that net new housing does not have a negative impact on fiscal finances. As I said, we're updating that study, but look at it this way too. You have a lot of fixed physical costs with diminishing student population. So your per unit cost from your capital costs is increasing from that perspective. But when you look at what it brings in terms of real estate taxes and other economic spin-off, generally, net new housing is positive, and multifamily housing, 2 to 5 units at least, is more positive than a single family house per acre. Yep.
Just to be clear though, East Greenwich is one of the few communities that is not losing a lot of school population.
Yeah, because
That
the
will
quality of your
probably
school.
come,
Yeah.
but for right now, we are holding our own. But I wanna give somebody else, I appreciate your questions, and I wanna give somebody else a chance. It's not that we won't come back to you, but, Susan.
I just wanna add around the same subject for people is, well, we didn't explicitly say that all low-income housing is paying property tax in East Greenwich. None of them get a free ride. So that's why, one of the reasons that contribute to the fact you have several units on a small site, you're getting a lot of property tax.
So each person that's in those units is paying property tax?
That's right.
Or the
Doesn't matter
owner
how
on behalf
low
of each of the units. So the
Doesn't
point,
matter how low income they are, that property is paying property tax.
yeah, so
There's
did
no
you,
exemption.
the point being, affordable housing, whoever it's serving, is paying real estate taxes. Per unit, more units per acre, that's where the math comes in. And I know you're a little skeptical, but I will say there've been studies out of MIT, Mass Housing Partnership, Rhode Island previously, that have always disproven this concern about school cost in particular.
Yeah, it's counterintuitive, but
Yeah.
Back in the back there.
Hi, I think a year ago, Speaker Chikarsky, don't massacre his name, had a proposal on the table to convert dormant and vacant commercial properties along Route 2 or Route 5 into multifamily housing. I don't know if that's still alive. Do you have any status? I mean, I personally believe that those would be great target areas for something more positive than rotting unused commercial property, but
Yeah, so the question was about Speaker Shikarchi's legislation. Yes, the Assembly voted, the governor signed legislation this year that you can convert commercial and industrial sites by right to housing. Yes.
And by right means, in other words, you don't have to go and get
Get
a
additional
zoning-
permission, right. I mean, within the shell, not like you take it down and you build something totally new.
okay. Do you, just follow on, are you aware, is any construction companies, is anybody actually
Yeah.
converting and doing something?
Yeah,
Or-
in fact, last week I was at a ground break, in Lincoln, thanks James, for an old mill building that's being converted into housing. But actually Rhode Island has had quite a history of doing that. And so, yeah, I think to your point, it makes sense, the buildings are there, the infrastructure, the public water and sewer infrastructure is probably there already. It's a really good land use, from a lot of perspectives, to reuse these buildings. Yep.
We have an example of that right on Water Street down Water and King. What's the name of that land? The old, that mill building?
The Bay Mill.
It's the Bay.
Bay Mill.
The Bay Mill. I mean, it's been housing for decades. I don't know when it was developed, probably 80s. Yeah.
I just had a question related to property taxes. Now, if we do a 30-year deed restriction, are you eligible for reduced property taxes like deed law?
If you do a 30-year deed restriction on the affordable housing, aren't you subject, or aren't you allowed, some sort of tax break like the 8 law? A community can agree to do that. That's not dictated by the state.
Okay, I thought it was the same one. So So is that?
The state law enables communities to be able to do it.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you know if we have that
Yeah.
incentive here?
I don't.
I don't know. James doesn't know either. Susan?
Most cities are using it. There's hardly any city that's not using it.
That are allowing,
Yeah, because it's been taken to court, and
okay.
they really haven't used it.
So they might be paying less property taxes.
No, they're paying, actually, they're paying based on the income of the property. So if
8%
the
of the
property-
gross rent.
So as the property gets more rent and goes up, you're always getting more money.
And on the 8%, it's based on the income of the property, but it's usually for a fixed period of years too. It's not for, it's not forever.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
the deed restriction.
for reference, like a market rate property would pay more than 20% of the gross rent typically. So it is it's an incentive people should think about.
Yes, in the back.
The 15,000 units that we have as a 5-year goal, sounds like a big number and a small number at the same time.
Yes.
And I guess I'm wondering, will it really make a dent? And was it as modest as that because that's all that we could possibly hope for? Because those 0.4% increases or building rates sound very small. And so I guess I'm just curious to know how we came about that broad statewide goal, and then also how we think about, whether or not we're gonna need to adjust that as we go. Even without population growth, because maybe we won't have that, but just knowing the changes that happen with the housing stock.
So how do we get to our 15,000 unit goal? Is it enough? So the consultant team looked at a number of things. They looked at what is a healthy vacancy rate in both rental and home ownership. For both, there's somewhere between 4 and 6% vacancy rate. So how much stock do you have to get there? That was one of the primary things. Will we cure rent increases and home price increases? No. Will 15,000 slow it down? Yes. So that's what they're looking at. They're also looking at, to get to that, trends in family formation, inflow and outflow. We want some population growth to grow the economy. All those went into that with our consultants, but I would say that in the end, the primary measure of health was the vacancy rate that we need to get to loosen the market and make it work at better prices.
So we think that will address the affordability issue,
Yes.
right? So that folks are back to spending 30% on housing rather than 50% or more.
Will they get back to spending 30%? Probably not every household,
Sure.
but we'll move the market towards that, yes.
But that's kind of the goalpost that we have in
Yes,
mind.
that's the federal sort of gold standard of affordability, 30% of your income.
Denise?
Yes.
Oh, wait, actually, Alan has had his hand up
Yeah.
on and off, so
I've
Alan?
got a base question. Why do we have to populate this entire piece of property with these swimmage?
Why do we have to
Why
populate?
do we have to have so much housing? I mean, we're covering farmland, we're covering horse fields, we're saturated. And yet there's parts of the state that it's all forest. And there's parts of the country where people are abandoning towns. You go down to Texas, outside Dallas, people are moving away. They don't even have a school because all the school children are moving away. Why here? I understand it's a nice place to live. I lived there all my life, so I know it's a nice place to live. But it's losing the quality that made it what it is in the first place. Because every piece of land is being developed.
Actually.
Okay, so the question, maybe have heard it, is why here, why East Greenwich? We're using up land. So I would turn it back and say, why should East Greenwich be exempt from what we're asking the state as a whole?
why
Let me
should-
finish, let me finish.
Yeah,
Let me
yeah.
finish, deliver. But more than that, why doesn't East Greenwich think about changing their zoning so it's not large lot, single family? Why don't we think about conservation? If we were to do townhomes or small ranch courts or twos and threes or
No,
fours.
no, why would I want that? That's not why I moved here.
Just that,
That's
you know,
exactly
sir,
right.
hold on, we really are gonna have a civil conversation here.
That was civil, but that's
Well,
not why
that,
we moved
but you're
to East
also
Greenwich.
interrupting. She was talking, I'm happy to have you raise your hand. We've got some time here, so let's just let her talk.
We have a problem in the state. And every community should be helping us address it. It is a problem if we don't have housing for new and young families, for older adults that want to downsize. What's of our economy across the state? So I understand that a lot of folks say, that's not what we've built. That's not what we look like. But let me reiterate, lots of us go to our town centers, it is what we used to build. We just don't do it anymore, and yet we point to that town center as something that's precious and lovely and walkable. So I think we need to think a little bit beyond. So let's say you don't want ranches. Think about what 4 townhomes could look like. They might look the same from the outside as the single family next door when you do it well. I think design can be an amazingly forceful facilitator. I think all of this has to be done with good design, with forethought, with a thought about the green spaces we have, the quality of life we want for whatever age you are. But I'm just gonna leave it here. There's a problem across our state, and every part of the state has to be part of that solution in a sensitive manner.
So I think I have a
Well,
question.
just a second though, this guy, I'd
So
like to give
diminishing
you a
the quality
chance.
of life for people who moved in 25 years ago, like myself, doesn't matter.
I'm not saying.
I moved here specifically because I wanted open land and I wanted to be away from the city and I wanted to be less crowded. And now I'm having this thrust upon me, and that's okay?
So, are we thrusting upon East Greenwich and a gentleman who moved here 25 years ago, who didn't want to be in the city? Are we thrusting that kind of physical and environmental on him? I honestly, and we can disagree, I think that 111 units built over 5 years is far from creating an urban environment, is far from chewing up your green spaces when it's done with sensitivity to those issues.
I think one of the issues is that we have a couple of developments that have been approved. That one is for 410 units, or 8 units, and one, it's not been fully approved actually. And of course, it will take many years to build that out. And then the other one, being Ridgeline Estates, which is 38 units total. And that has received approval, although now it's caught up in litigation, so it's stalled. But I think that's what these people are thinking of, and they're not thinking 100 and something units, they're thinking 500 units.
I think, I don't know that project, but I think we always have to be sensitive to the balance of needs and concerns, but not to the exclusion of housing. But we're probably gonna agree to disagree.
Okay, we're definitely gonna agree to disagree, but just like everybody else, when I was a kid, I started out with my first house in Providence, and then I worked my way up to Warwick, and then I worked my way up to East Greenwich. What is wrong with that old way of philosophy, where you work your way up to a place that you wanna be, your dream home, your dream area, and now you wanna put 400 plus low-income condos right on top of where I live? Is that
I
right?
don't know that
I don't see that as
project.
being right.
I don't know that
First of all,
project.
it's not a low income,
Right.
it's a mixed use, or it's not mixed
Well,
use,
they're
but
not
it's a lot of different
single-family,
types.
nice.
You're right, they're not.
Typical
We're
East
putting in
Greenwich
low
suburban
income on
homes.
Division Road, and that project got is held back, but it's supposed to be enormous. that they were putting in there, and that got held up in litigation and such.
No.
Past the horse farm, and then on the right.
Yeah,
That's,
the
that's
old
actually
shipping
not
farm.
held up in litigation, that is just.
Is that going
it-
through?
It probably
And how many
will,
units is that?
that's 408 units.
That's what we're talking about.
These are,
That's what I'm
yes.
talking about.
That's exactly what
Okay.
you're talking about.
But
Okay.
they're not low income.
They're not low income.
If I could just add,
Denise,
because I
your
wanted
turn.
to piggyback on that as well, so my family from East Greenwich, went to high school here, was able to come back with my family, and again, would like to have the hopes for my children, should they want the opportunity to move to Rhode Island. Many of us are concerned about affordable housing, the missing middle, but, you know, the projections that you did for 2030 of 111 units, 17 affordable, that's balanced, but what's happening because of the 10%, we're getting overrun and the land is getting decimated with much more than we can do. I'm not sure on any given day, what the state's doing to look at our roadways. Our traffic studies that are presented, we don't have a problem. Anyone that's been on our roadways, we have a significant issue that's only gonna get worse if we don't, you know, take for our infrastructure. It's a time to.
I'm gonna,
I guess, and the main thing is,
So this is a,
how
you
can
know,
communities pause and plan?
I came back, I want my kids to be able to come back, you're acknowledging there's an affordability, but the comp permit law,
Yeah.
I'm not here, I will be blunt with you, I'm not here to discuss the comp permit law. I would suggest that if each Greenwich was affirmatively working to meet its 10%, you'd be out from under the comp permit law. So there is an answer here, and communities, if they want to be proactive, and we are willing to work with communities, we have a toolkit coming out on design, there's municipal technical assistance through Rhode Island Housing. Happy to work with communities around this, but there is an answer, and that is to be proactive.
Who to be proactive, our town council, community members, like the planning department, like who do we, because every time, everybody wants to kind of, and no disrespect, pass the buck. And so who can we work, community members are willing to work together for the
Yes.
issue, but people have to be willing to help us to get there.
So who can work, James, I'll be there in a second, who can work together, who is it, right? So I will go first with, you know what, yes, it is the voters who put the town council or your select persons or your planning board in place. They all worry about getting reelected when they have housing developments in front of them. You know, so, when you think a development is appropriate, 38 units instead of 400 some odd, or whatever it is, and I don't wanna demean whoever's doing the 400, I don't know it. Go to the meetings, help them understand that there is a yes vote in East Greenwich for some of this stuff. And if your planning department wants to be in touch with us, we're happy to come down and talk, we're happy to look at land, we're happy to talk about what subsidies are available, absolutely. James, did you wanna add something?
Yeah, I did. You know, the two things that have moved the needle furthest towards the 10% in the past few years, in Brookside Terrace, okay, 96 units, right on Route 2, behind Dave's, right behind Ocean State Animal Hospital, and Soria on Frenchtown Road, another 60 units, okay? That's a huge chunk of new units for East Greenwich, and it's come close to doubling where we were before those projects got approved. And I would say under prior town council and different planning board, they likely would not have been approved. And it's because of the, you know, and Dr. Schrager's here, but I'll say, you know, because of town leadership and the way that the planning board has reflected what they're doing, it's made East Greenwich a lot closer to that 10%, and it's done it in a way that's thoughtful, that fits in the context of the community, that is not something that folks don't feel like belongs here. It's something that if the average person drives past those properties on a given day, they would have no idea that it's affordable housing. It's something that blends in where it is and is a good use of the space.
I would add, Mark Schrader from the town council, I would add that the law, that the 10% law, as you mentioned, has been in effect for about 30 years. And over 30 years, we went from about 2.5% to about 5.5%. It really was only when we did the 100% affordable, as was mentioned with Soria and Brookside, that moved the needle. because when you do even the 25% for the comp permits, it'll take us another 25 years to reach 10%. So, one of those, the solutions is to look for appropriate places to put 100% affordable, and that will take us over 10%.
Did folks hear that? Yes.
Yes, you and then Tara.
I'm just curious about the affordable question, because you're building places like Soria and Brookside that they're called affordable, but the average elderly person can't afford to live there. I wanna know, I'm not from East Greenwich, I tried really hard to get into Soria and I didn't get it. I owned a house for 50 years and gave it up and decided I wanted to live in East Greenwich because I do all my business in East Greenwich. How do they feel about elderly housing? Do they have the same feeling? Because you're building condos that I could never afford, they're $300,000 and up. What about the elderly? What is the feeling in the community towards elderly coming in and living in, Soria didn't even turn out to be elderly. The mixed income of it is not elderly. It was misrepresented when it came in. The housing authority in East Greenwich said they weren't gonna be involved. Yes, they were involved, and that's how I got involved. I applied through the East Greenwich housing. I have to tell you, 6 months of hell, excuse my language, trying to get in to something I could afford to retire in and be with all my friends and all my businesses and my hairdresser and, this is where I wanted to live. How do they feel about the elderly coming in? They're only talking about condos, which I feel bad about, where I came from. Condos everywhere.
So how do communities feel about elderly? They're actually generally much more welcoming of elderly, although I was laughing with Peter, when someone called me years ago now in Massachusetts. They were concerned, they were trying to expand an elderly development, and the neighbors, and this was in a city, the neighbors were upset because the elderly are deaf and they turn their TVs up too loud. But generally speaking, elderly are welcome. I don't know how Soria was represented to you, but you partially proved my point about what is affordable, right? We say it's affordable, but
it's not.
Well, it's affordable to whom, right? The need spans an income, spans the income. And we need it across all of that. Fixed income, onwards up and up.
And the elderly population is just expanding. We're all getting old at the same time.
So,
I'm
yes.
83, I never expected to be alive at 83, but anyways.
Well, and I'm speaking at AARP later this week, and I will say to you what I'm gonna say to them. Yes, the elderly population is increasing relative to our younger population everywhere. But folks, listen, folks know that older people vote. They know you have a voice. So let's use that voice for both ends of that barbell, right? Not just for elderly, inclusive of elderly, but also for the young people and homeowners and renters that we need down in this age group. Second, you have a powerful voice. Show up at the planning board meetings, show up at the council meetings, and show your support when something's coming out.
Just to give you an example, Soria had families in it. I was excited. There were gonna be young people.
Yes.
Young people, children. I met a woman with 2 children. I was so excited when I thought I had an apartment there because I'm going to be with people, not elderly, because I don't feel old. So, and that's misrepresented as low-income housing.
It is subsidized and it does have some affordable, but again, affordability runs really deep, the need runs deep, and we don't, that's why I also get upset about that praise of workforce housing. Because we're way down here with folks that have worked all their lives, are working, and it's not, we don't have what we need for them. So we need all of it.
Susan probably has an answer. I wanna make sure we get to Tara too, but do you?
Just a short point is, elderly housing was primarily built by the federal program, 202, which provides your subsidy, so you get very low income. The federal government canceled that several years ago. We were doing several hundred a year in Rhode Island, until the federal program was canceled, 6 years ago, 7 years ago? Maybe 7 or 8 years, so you need to vote, you need to talk to your federal representatives.
I heard
You
every
need
one
the
of them,
federal-
trust me, I'm very.
But that's what she's saying, to vote, you need to be there, that's where the big money came from.
Okay,
And I know how to cut back this year, I know that too, so.
Tara,
Sure, in the spirit of collaboration, I just wanted to see if we could go back a little bit to what you said, because I thought I heard you say if we're working towards our 10%, and we're getting closer, and there is some sort of project that comes ahead, which is on a comp permit, and so automatically would be green lighted, harder to push back on, that the town should reach out to somebody in your office, because we have been going in the right direction. Can you just maybe clarify, or am I mishearing? I just wanna make sure, because I thought you said we wanna work together, and so what does that mean, I guess?
So, in terms of 10%, you have to get to the 10% before you are free and clear of the comp permit. Well, actually, the law changed. You have to get to the 10%, and you have to have an inclusionary zoning law, which isn't all that bad, because every time you build market, you're gonna fall from your 10% if you don't also build affordable. There's that. Get to the 10%, and you've got some clearance. I was saying, in terms of helping communities to figure out how to get to that 10%, where's the land, what can it look like, doing some charrettes, where we are available to help you, and there's money also through, it's put out right now, I think it's maybe all out, but there'll be another round of technical assistance money through Rhode Island Housing, where communities can get the services of architects, engineers, planners to assist.
Okay, our town planner, we said to him, how long will it take us if we're using our current sort of model of the last 20 years of building? How long will it take us to get to 10%? And he's estimating 70 years. So that is a long period of time to get to 10%. So what can the town do during that long window before we get to 10% to try to work together, as you were saying, to keep green space and quality of life? If you have suggestions, I think we would really like to hear them.
Well, I think your town councilman, his suggestion of building housing that has a significant amount of affordables, not just 10% or 20%, you mentioned 100%. Take that leap to get you much closer to the 10%. What were your stats about how you've moved? You've moved significantly.
Yeah, several percent.
we're at
We're up about 7.5% now.
7.5, and that's without, like, all those units behind, the VFW on Post Road, or on Main Street. None of those have come on yet, and there is an affordable component there. I think they're 25% affordable.
It's still the 25%, which really is not gonna move the.
Not gonna move
I
the
would,
needle.
one comment about elderly housing is the big development on Division Road, the 410 units, that is 50% reserved for 55 and over. So that will provide some relief. Affordability, again, that's a relative term.
I have to double check my facts. I just a quick concern. 50% of it's reserved for folks over 55.
That's right.
I think it has to be 100% reserved for 55 and over in order to meet fair housing law. James is looking perplexed. Peter isn't helping me. But
Just because I don't know off the top of my head what the breakout.
I thought the development had to be 50. Yeah, maybe it's broken up. Might be broken up.
So, we're building that.
Take a look.
When you look at that facility that they're building, when they're building that facility, they're gonna take a good chunk of green land. And to the gentleman's point, right, that's why we moved here, it's a quaint town, et cetera. So we got areas like where Stanley Bostage was, et cetera. Now, it's all private land. Why aren't we building up in areas like that? We've got Brown and Shaw, at the area down there. Why aren't we building in areas like that instead of taking out green trees and everything that makes us a quaint town that comes along with that? And to the gentleman's point, I think you're dead on, and we're not being offensive, but here's the thing. We pay an enormous amount of taxes in East Greenwich. We're not number one, I think we're number two in the state of Rhode Island. So that's part of the reason why we're here and having this conversation, is because we are paying that amount of taxes, because we love our town the way it is, and we bought into it. The thing is that if your schools get overrun, everything else, the little mantle that we hang our hat on is the fact that, oh, well, we've got the greatest school system. Well, guess what? I guess that school system probably will start going down. And we won't even have to handle, we won't have that on our mantle.
Okay, so I'm not sure why you think more housing and affordable housing would cause your school system to go down, but we're gonna put that over there. Your primary point was, why aren't we building in places you think that, and I don't know all these places,
Yep.
are more appropriate? And I think, again, the town can help guide that. If it's, if it's an owner that might be willing to work with a developer, I understand this is probably similar to the idea of, adaptive reuse or reusing buildings.
Right.
Help guide developers to those buildings, find out who the owner is,
But
I
don't
mean,
think
I
we have
understand
this-
your
We
point.
don't have the say. We don't know who to go to. We don't know, it just magically starts happening. We find out, well, there's a development going in. That's what we end up finding out. So it's well past the point of us being able to affect a decision.
Well, it's
That's what
not,
we find
maybe
out.
not gonna stop what's going on now, and again, I'm not familiar with that development, but again, in the terms of trying to get to the 10%, if you think there are areas where development works, where it makes good use of the land or the existing building, then I think your planning department, certainly your assessing department knows who owns it. What's the likelihood? Is there something that's approachable there? I don't know, but I hear what your point is.
There is, the town is just beginning the process of revising its comprehensive plan, which is not the comp permit, which is, they sound similar, but the comprehensive plan has to be updated every 10 years. And it's kind of like a roadmap for your town in every possible domain. So it'll talk about the recreation, where do we wanna go with recreation, and where do we wanna go with open space, and where do we want more housing? And interestingly, the last comp plan did not anticipate all the infill that we've seen downtown, I believe. So things change over time, but I invite you guys, we'll be covering it, East Greenwich is gonna be covering it, but that will be work that is done by the planning board, is that right? Which meets on Wednesday nights. And we'll be trying to keep you up to date on when those meetings are happening, and you can come, because that's when they might be looking at specific parcels and saying, this would be an ideal location for housing of some kind or other. They have to, by law, update this, and they do have to identify different parcels in town. So it's gonna be happening, and you can have your say.
I just wanna make one comment. There are other towns who have gone over the 10%,
Yes,
There
there
are,
are towns who have
but
gone
not
over the
many.
10%.
Not many.
but there are.
Yes.
Because of the elevation. Not so much the low, I don't see the problem with the low income coming into East Greenwich. I just don't see it, I have my
Joe,
reasons.
Joe?
Yeah, I
And
just
then,
like to.
and then I think
there was
we
a
have to,
gentleman over
okay, I want everyone to have
Quick
their say.
reminder.
Are you okay?
But
Continue to
these
talk
are
here?
developers, they're bringing
Okay.
plans to the town, to these planning boards. The town doesn't get to pick what comes in, besides some of these programs that can be kind of targeted, but but this is privately owned land, this is, you know, people trying to build projects, they have to deal with what's in front of them, so it can get very complex.
But are we at a point where the town should be working
Yeah, like longer
proactively
strategy-wise,
to
definitely.
see what's available and try to contain, you know, the further development, or it's balance.
Yeah.
And we can't build on something that we don't know the land's available. So it sounds like you're saying though that our town officials should be more proactive in nature for that, cause given the 2030 goals, those are achievable.
Yep.
And then if we hit a certain amount for, like, if we get more 100% affordable, we're not gonna be 70 years down the road.
And I know, like, your planning department is looking at these sorts of issues, and there's not a whole lot of staffing either, so I don't wanna, you know, I don't
No,
wanna.
then it's just been very frustrating to
Yeah.
keep hearing, we have to go by the state law, there's nothing we can do, we're gonna lose if we appeal. And it's, you know, the community's just getting very frustrated because we're losing a lot of the character that, you know, we wanna preserve, while also, welcoming people to come here. But again, with the 5-year goal, it's achievable. It's the extra housing and loss of land that's coming on top of that, and the traffic.
The traffic is ridiculous.
Somebody over here?
Just a clarification, if something's identified in the comprehensive plan, you made this comment earlier, I'm not sure everyone appreciates this. If something's in the comprehensive plan from the town, there really is very little to do once that's identified as a spot. Is that accurate? I think you were, just wanted to share a spot.
If something is identified in the comprehensive plan as good for housing, then it's harder for the town to decide later that they don't want the housing. The land where the 408 units is planned for was identified in the last comp plan as a good space for mixed-use residential development. And, it's not mixed use, but it is residential. And so, yeah, it's harder, in that way, the developer can say, it's in your comp plan that this should be, you know, developed as housing. Now, the town has to identify parcels, so, and, you know.
But they're parcels of town land.
No,
No.
these are all private. I mean, if nobody comes to buy them, they don't get developed.
Just to clarify that point on comprehensive permits, one of the few reasons that a planning board can deny a comp permit is that it's inconsistent with the comprehensive plan. So that's where that fits in.
Right. So in this case, that parcel was on the comp plan for residential.
And the planning board denied it.
Because it wasn't mixed
They
use
were-
as
because
has been.
for other reasons. Planning board denied it, subsequently it played out a different way.
One more question, and then you're welcome to stay for coffee and talk amongst yourselves a bit, and cookies, and that's all from 7 Stars, by the way, so we thank them. Yes.
One more quick one, because I know you're on the board. So when you're doing the planning, are you taking into consideration all of the traffic? Division Road seems to be hammered with traffic, with Shippeytown right there, and Division. There are times when I don't even leave, I just say, forget it, it's not, I'll wait till the traffic disappears. It's out of control. Is that taken into the equation? That we keep on flooding Division Road area? Or it seems like we're flooding Division area?
So certainly a very important part of any application that comes before the planning board is traffic studies, and we have those traffic studies from the developers reviewed by our own independent. So yes, short answer is yes. Definitely take those into consideration. But again, keep in mind, there's a lot of moving parts that a lot of it goes well beyond East Greenwich, the development in West Warwick, Coventry, etc. We hear about that. But at the same time, there's the changes that are being implemented with the Route 4 access to 95, which will have reverse effect on that in terms of reducing traffic. So What's the right answer? I don't think any of us know, but yes, it's an important factor to be taken into consideration.
There are hundreds of units that are on the drawing board for West Warwick and Coventry. that-
Thousands.
Yeah, that use East Greenwich roads. So this is beyond just the East Greenwich issue. And as you say, I think we send our planning board representatives to those other towns to sit in on those meetings. But they are gonna be accessing East Greenwich roads, especially Division Road.
I've heard they're using them as a cut through, essentially.
Well, but
Division
they're
Road is a
actually
cut
these
through.
large developments, some of them, Greg, are several hundred units.
Ones that, I don't know how big they are,
Yeah.
but the ones, what we've heard is that things that are in process